Welcome to the presentation today. My name is Douglas Gabriel. I'm with John Barnwell, author, Rosicrucian scholar, Grail scholar, and the person who's been correcting me for 50 years. That's the reason we have him here today. Hi, John. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, Douglas. And as we were discussing after the first part of this particular episode, uh, it in these latest endeavors, they seemed like as if everything is leading up to what we're doing right now. And so I really relish the feeling that brings out, because it's really you have to open up your feeling nature to be able to find what we're talking about here. You can't just intellectually pursue it. So you have to leave all that at the door because it won't really get you there. And when we start to delve into the work of Rudolf Steiner, what we're confronted with are things that are based on realities, things that have actually taken place, individuals that have actually existed, historical events that actually occurred. And so it starts to become a profound experience because you're connecting with something that really does exist, and which has an interesting aspect of it because Rudolf Steiner was really unfamiliar with the Bible as he was a young man. He was an altar boy for a time, but that he said he never really came into contact with anybody that was particularly specifically religious or what have you. And so he was never really confronted with unlocking the secrets in the Bible, so that when he began to have his own personal experiences, then in retrospect, he went back to the Bible and he would find that it was there. It's just that you had to be able to separate things that are there as kind of initiation content that's representing a certain spiritual soul transition point for the characters in the story, or whether it's an actual story element. And so that's kind of the sifting that one has to do. And he also adds that the Bible won't really be fully understood until the end of Earth's evolution.
Those are such great points, and it leads into what we're talking about today, which we don't discuss ahead of time. I always like to surprise you, John. I like to, at some point in the talk, surprise you. So maybe this will surprise you. As John just said, or indicated, we could make a list. And if we put a bullet point by it, we think we owned it. And if we put a number by it, then it's ours. But it doesn't mean anything. So this is a chart, right? And so, look closely. These are the incarnations of St. John the Baptist, St. John and John the Baptist. But what good would that do you to have a nice list? Well, Steiner said that there is two types of people, cosmologists and then those who feel it through their heart. And John is constantly pointing to that, with the heart. It has to come, and he says feelings. Now, when you say feelings, some people go, feelings, I don't do feelings. Well, because they don't do higher feelings. Okay, moral feelings, folks. Try to have moral feelings, feelings that have consequences in reality. For instance, the new book that's coming out called about Scythianus and Manu, well, you can go there and examine the record, and you won't understand it. Then you can read Rudolf Steiner, and then go there and read the record, and you will understand it, and you'll go, oh, how did he understand all of these things? Who knows? But just like Christian Rosenkreuz as the wondrous child, and in Steiner in the Grail triptych of Anime von Richter, which was supposed to be at the centerpiece of the Johannesbau, his first building, because everybody in those days, until you look up what is currently happening at the time, you don't understand Steiner, okay? At his time, everybody had a club. And these clubs were magnificent. They were buildings that had all the Egyptian symbolism or Persian symbolism, all this, eclectic, syncretic, cool stuff, and theosophists and spirits. It was amazing. So they said to him, well, how come we don't have one? So he created the underground temple so no one could see the outside. I can't explain any of these. Please don't ask me to. But anyway, they're underground, and it has some of the similarities of the first Kirtian, but not really. And at the very centerpiece is supposed to be this magnificent painting, a triptych, just like the triptych of what is it, Eisenheim, the one that healed people of the disease from the rye argot, the dancing disease. This triptych was supposed to heal your spiritual being and show you the past, the present, and the future. And from that, like the old time through the mystery initiation centers, the images or the symbols or the mandalas or the beings, like in Tibetan Buddhism, the deities that you're worshiping, which they have an imprint on you. Okay, if I show you this imprint, which I held up, and you have a list, it's dead. You have to understand what those things mean. And to understand each one of the beings, let's say we numbered them, and John in this new book, which we have out, Saint Germain and Master Jesus, which is not what you probably think unless you're an anthroposophist. And if you are, then this should be giving you some of the pieces to the puzzle that you've never been able to find. Because in this book, I had John's agreement to use something he'd written before about all the lives of CRC, but every reference to it. And then Steiner quotes that go right along with it. So as you read this, it is the single most complete, unless some of your new books have this in it, which I don't think they do. This thing that you wrote is, I don't remember, maybe you could tell us the history of it, but when you wrote it, it should be a book unto itself, because it's the biography of CRC, which is a key biography for all humans to understand if they want to embrace their humanness. And so you have here, through these pictures, these engrams, we call them, the schemata, they'd call them with electrical, or they'd call it systems programming in modern MIT talk, or they'd call it set and subset, descriptions of everything. All these, it depends on the way that it's presented to you. If the knowledge, when you were a Greek, and shocking people, I mean, this is going to shock you, but this is the kind of thing that happened in the ancient mystery initiation centers, but they experience these as beings, not just as what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is going to mean meaningless to you. You will laugh to think that this was mystery initiation wisdom. But in the height of the mystery initiation centers of Aloysius, what did they show? They showed a burning fire above you, opening up, and that's the sun. And then they hold up a shaft of wheat. There you go. You got initiated. But what you're supposed to take from that is that you and the moon and Adonis and all and Persephone and the springing of life and Demeter's gifts are all in relationship to the sun, and we are the mirror of the sun. So they were whispered in their ear, the mystery. Hey, John, you're a mystery initiation member for Aloysius. You do know that the moon is the reflection of the sun, right? Now, a third grader would look at you and say, you're retarded. But the third grader has written off the sun and the moon in that, because scientism has taught them that everything's material. The heart is a pump, the brain is a computer, and the rest of the body, they don't understand at all. But anyway, what we have here is the engrams. So with this Grail triptych, this picture, which became the grounding point for this new book, Saint Germain and Master Jesus, because we taught about these things before, but not in this way. We never gave out the inner core secrets. As a matter of fact, the charts I've held up, those are incomplete charts. And John doesn't go for incomplete charts. So I have the handwritten in complete charts from the book. But as you read this, it isn't about making a chart. It's about understanding history, spiritual history, as we call it, truth history, in terms of one of our, projects. But in terms of these books, this is anthroposophy through and through. Nobody's speculating here. And if I speculated once, he would have put a footnote. There was no speculation. You take the words exactly as they are. And when you read the words, no matter how many times you read them, if it's mystery, initiation, wisdom, you may get a completely new insight that blows your mind, no matter how many times. It does not matter. So that's what's really going on here, is we're trying to show you through Anna Mae's picture the grounding for St. John, the divine, who was Lazarus raised, who had been previously in the court of King Solomon. Now, in that court, there was only three people shown: King Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, and Hiram Abiff. You got to read the book to get this, because I'm not going to just blurt this stuff out. Because if you don't look at this picture, let me tell you the history of this picture for me. I came across this picture as a young anthroposophist in the Glass House, one of the surviving buildings that Rudolf Steiner personally built for the first Goetheanum, and I was working there. And when I saw this, I asked people, what is this? And they said, oh, that's Edith Marion's picture. And I go, Edith Marion didn't paint this way. What? It blew my mind. I didn't understand it. So I asked for years, and somehow someone gave me a copy of it, but with no explanation. And after many years, I can't remember how many years, I got a German copy of the letter that was always stuck behind this copy of these pictures. So if you didn't have so I had to get a German translator, a really good one, because this is the most complicated text you'll ever read, because it's sheer anthroposophy in I don't know, shorthand or something. So this text of this German on the back of this picture tells the whole history of mankind using these characters who show up in the triptych. In the past, underneath the cross of Golgotha, the mystery of Golgotha, and in the future, when the 12 initiates are standing around the wondrous child who becomes Christian Rosenkreuz, who basically is us, and all of us have access to. So I'd look at this picture. I'm sure you have stories of when I was obsessed with this, and I tried to figure it out, and you have to use a magnifying glass, and just terrible copy, and I couldn't quite figure it out because I didn't know who some of these people in this were, right? And one day I come across the German, get it translated, and I start studying. I go, holy cow, this is the whole history, the whole spiritual history of humankind right here. It's exactly as somehow I got that phrase, whoever, that the whole history of the world is standing beneath the cross, right? Well, it is, because these people are reincarnated beings working with spiritual beings, working with what Sergei Prokofiev, correct me if I'm wrong, John, calls the subornal, the connection of different realms together until pretty soon, how many beings are in that being? Distinct, different beings, from avatars to angels to past incarnations of some of the highest masters to the original Adam, to, you know, you can't hardly figure this out unless you spend a few decades thinking about it. And then when you do, it gives you what Rudolf Steiner says all of anthroposophy gives you: confidence to be able to look wherever you look and see through the outer appearance and see what is behind, what are the, what doctors would call what we see the symptoms. They never go for the cure. We're going for the cure. What's behind the physical world? And that's the mystery of the Rosicrucians. So in this picture of we'll just call her from now on Anna Mae. In Anna Mae's picture, we put it twice. And what happened was we found also a letter by Margarita Hauska. And Dr. Hauska described, and it's complicated, right, John? I can't even describe this part. It's like a letter talking about somebody who's talking about what was on the back of the letter and then talking about another letter from Anna Mae confirming it. So anyway, we give you the full history of this picture. There's been, Adrian Anderson did a book on this picture, but hardly anybody else ever addresses this picture. But Steiner considered it the centerpiece of the Johannesbau, the two Johns, John the Baptist and John the Divine. And when you understand this, that's the secret mystery of the Rosicrucians. That's why when I'm reading these things of Steiner, I'm going, Holy Lord John, I happen to know some third degree Masons who have studied all the degrees of all the different forms of Masonry. And here it is, Steiner giving us finally the picture of what it is that all these traditions seem to miss, the central core of and he turns it into practically, he calls it, what's that called? The temple legend, right? So if you study the temple legend, you understand that you are Cain and Abel, you are Solomon and Hiram Abiff, and the woman standing between you, the Queen of Sheba, is like your karma. And the whole thing that rests is the Holy Grail. So the Holy Grail, again, in the past was this agreement between the Hebrew people, Solomon, and then Hiram Abiff, who was actually from the king of Tyre, came to build his temple. When you understand this story, it's the Grail, okay? That's the Ark of the Covenant. That's the child of Queen of Sheba. And then when you see under the cross, if you can figure out who all the beings are under the cross, you have Steiner's Christian cosmology in a picture. And when you go to the future, you or me nor nobody is going to understand what Steiner was really communicating there, because it's an image that is for the next, as I said before, 36,000 years. That is a prediction of what human beings will become. So as you stand before this picture, it would blow my mind. And as I studied it, it took, I don't know, 10 years of studying it to finally say, oh, that's what he's trying to say by all of his lectures, and everything is in this picture. And I don't know an anthroposophist besides Adrian Anderson who's ever addressed it. Besides you.
Yeah, well, it was, if you look at the history of the painting itself, it goes back to that Munich mystery drama and the performances from 1909 to 1913. And it was based on these indications of Rudolf Steiner, and it was originally planned, as you said, for the Johannesbau, but intended later on for the first Goetheanum. It was given to the Hamburg Waldorf School after World War I, but during World War II, it was destroyed. So there are replicas of this particular piece of work that have circulated for ever since then. And fortunately, we've been gifted with that wonderful translation by Sonja von Humrick that gives us the narrative that goes along with the pictures. So we see that we have principal individuals in this whole mystery of Golgotha series of events that gives people a imagination to work with, that you can live with these images, and they can unfold in you as time goes by. And hopefully, after you've lived with the images long enough, they enter into your feeling and affect the activities of your will. And so that's the beauty of having basically three synoptic gospels, that they work on you in a threefold way. They give you the three pieces that are necessary to unlock the secrets of the Temple of Wisdom. And so what in the story of Hiram Abiff, what you have the three ruffians. Okay, well, that's kind of the rough way to go. You got these three ruffians who decide to take you down because you won't give them the secret word, the password. They want to know the password, but they can't get it by those means. And Solomon knew they were going to do that, but he stepped back and let it happen. He didn't stop it. And so there was once again this karmic event that occurred that has been kind of the bane of the evolution of the mysteries from the Old Testament since that time, carrying forward the whole drama with Cain and Abel. And it took the incarnation of Christ to reconcile these diverse streams of mystery wisdom, and the mystery of Cain and Abel, and the mystery of the two families and the two mothers and the two Jesus children. And so you have, like I was saying in the previous episode, that you have the Nathan Jesus passes away at around 12, and the Solomon Jesus passes on at that time and enters into the Nathan Jesus. And while he's in the Nathan Jesus until around age 30, he's developing these vehicles so that they could be the most perfected recipient of the incarnation of Christ at the turning point of time that occurred during the baptism by John the Baptist. But there's also the other aspects that are addressed somewhat within the triptych, and that you have that the mother of the Nathan Jesus also passed away. And so you have that whole merging of the two families, because the other father, Joseph, passed away, and the two families came together. And so you have later in life, you have the Jesus of Nazareth, who's discussing with his stepmother regarding the details of certain events that had taken place in his life. And it's through being able to reflect with her that he comes to a deepening of his relationship to all these various events that occurred within his life, including his encounters with the Essene Brotherhood, who as a symbol wore a little hammer around their neck. And so you have all these secrets that can be unlocked through contemplation. And that's the point of it, is that you have a capability of imagination. Rudolf Steiner says, you are clairvoyant. You just haven't perfected your vehicles to be able to have an experience of that clairvoyance. And so tools such as these can be very, very helpful in that regard.
I am so glad you said that. That was well said. And it takes my breath away that you were able to summarize that. That would blow away anyone who studies anything to do with Christ or the Christian religion. That's esoteric Christianity. Now, once you know that, you go, well, where do I see that? You could go back, you look in paintings, you go back and you look in traditions, you go back and you look in all these different places and you go, it ties them all together. Same thing would be true with anything that Rudolf Steiner was addressing. He went to the heart of it and he told you that, and it's still good 100 years later, still good probably 1,000 years later. And in some predictions, all the way to the end of the earth, what we would call. Yes. Now, once you understand that it's all a bunch of beings working together, some are invisible, some are higher, some have been human in the past and went into higher realms, and all of those are working through you, then you can understand how things like this can happen. That a certain being who had 10 incarnations in Persia, or an Aryan priest king, Zarathustra, was able to preserve his bodies time after time. But if you're a very high initiate, after you die, your etheric body doesn't just dissolve. It's been so perfected in some realms that the perfected aspect lives on. And where that lives, we could debate. There's a lot of new theories about that. But in fact, it lives somewhere and then manifests somewhere in the Akashic record. And so Zarathustra was able again and again, from incarnation to incarnation, to remember what he'd known before, and therefore was one of the wisest beings who ever lived, and was, of course, a student of Banu, and was a friend of Scythianus. And in a way, was the closest human being to the Nathan Jesus child, who would be the Jesus of Nazareth, the Essene community. He was the closest being to Jesus of Nazareth. And then he overlighted him. He didn't just go away. Just like his etheric body in the past was able to be preserved, he actually overlighted. I'll use that word. There's a lot of different words for it. But he was available for, but did not come into the space of that being who now, after using that intelligence for many years from age 12 to 30, then allowed the Christ only for 3 years. Now that's a being that is so high that there's no words to describe it. And that's at that point, I'd have to defer to John also and say, is there any way you can describe this? Because, you know, it's a solar being, but that's just the footstool upon where this being came from. That being came from higher hierarchies, and the highest Trinity, the Holy Trinity. And that being came all the way down through the hierarchies into humanness, and now is going back up, and like the water and the ocean, it's carrying all the boats with it as it rises. And so as we're trying to replicate that, and we know that the perfected vehicles of some of these beings are left there, and then we look at Zarathustra, we say, oh, so he stayed later and overlighted. Well, the same was true for the being who was not only, well, who was the original Eve we talked about in the last video. That original Eve had a child, and that was the original Adam, and that was the child who was born in the Essene community and kept that body throughout life because it was the purest body there ever was. So when they say immaculate conception, yes, she was immaculate. And later, when you called her the stepmother, and that's exactly the word, the stepmother of Jesus of Nazareth, who took on, who the body of Zarathustra left, the ego body, and the nature of the Christ came into, that mother was overlighted. But she wasn't just overlighted by one being. She was overlighted by an entire hierarchy called the beings of wisdom, called Sophia. And that overlighted her. And she also was overlighted by the being who was the original Eve. And the Hebrews called her, would have used the word Kadmon, Eve Kadmon, as Steiner used the word Adam Kadmon. There was also an Eve Kadmon. So these two pure beings, through immaculate conception of a spiritual nature, created a body that had never been here before. It had to be pure, or else it could not be the vessel for the Christ to incarnate in. And it was so pure and so had lacked previous earth incarnations, it was like an empty vessel, that Zarathustra could move his intelligence from his ego into that body and make it available for that being instantaneously. And then that being had all that wisdom that had been accrued. Well, don't forget the Eve being, the mother who was with Christ during his 3 years of ministry. That being, Eve, also had a history. And she had a history that wasn't unlike the being of Adam, which is also told in this book and is told in Steiner's Christian cosmology. But anyway, this being Eve was overlighted by the original Eve that was kept in heaven and then came down once and only once to incarnate, to birth this body that was perfect. And then she overlighted the mother. So she had a subornal connection of such a hierarchy, that's so high you can't describe it. It's all the wisdom that created the entire cosmos happening at once, completely self-aware. Okay, well, that's who that being was. If you can cognize that and your head didn't explode into plasma, or the fiery tongue of the Pentecost didn't burn on top of your head, you're lucky. Because if you understood it totally, you'd probably just burst into flames, because you can't understand that rank. Well, that rank came down and literally overlighted from the angelic realm the mother, who was Eve reincarnated. So this isn't just about the male line, Adam Kadmon, and it's not just about Eve Kadmon. It's about the new Eve, which is the Eve Sophia. And that Eve Sophia would have known all the wisdom of Isis, and all the wisdom of Inanna, and all the wisdom of the Shekinah, and all the wisdom of all the great goddesses. And also had passing through her at that time consciously, and this is never mentioned anywhere, and even saying it, I don't know who will understand this, but the being Anthroposophia is an invisible being, Steiner's described. He says, he said this to his followers and they freaked out. He said, she's right here in the room with us. They're all looking around. She's an invisible being, and every time you take a spiritual step, she steps right through you and helps you take that step up, and understands it and records it in the Akashic records, and their eyes are popping out of their head. He literally called this being down during the Christmas conference, and nobody understood what he was talking about, and almost no anthroposophist talks about the being of Anthroposophia. Well, we do, because Dr. Tyler Gabriel talked about it in the trilogy of the Gospel of Sophia and explained it in a female understanding of anthroposophy that had directly to do with encountering beings, and also the spiritual path of initiation, self-initiation, that you'd go through if you were doing that, and explain how it even transforms your body. Well, that's what the third triptych is about. Steiner described what we're going to become in the future, but if I told you it, you would laugh and you'd say, that can't be possible. But he put it into one of these engrams, one of these images, one of these beautiful artistic images that showed us what it would be, but showed us that it had to defy time, because all the leaders of all the different cultural ages were surrounded around that being, right? They all had their own wisdom all the way back to Atlantis and probably before. And they were beaming it into the child, and the child was taking it all in and going, yeah, this is well and good, but I also need a syncretic version of this that I can teach for the future that's going to be the new icons. And so he was beyond all of them. And in the later incarnation, they all gathered around him and he taught them, instead of him lying there in this crystal coffin. Now, that's an image. Well, what does that mean? That's your future body. And we can go into great detail because Steiner predicts exactly how that will happen. And no one would believe it if I told you. But it does have to do with plasma. It has to do with changing carbon and transforming that carbon into other elements. And as you do that, that's what this being could do. He could take in everything that those great teachers in time had to teach in one place. But he also said this happened in the spiritual world. And he also said it happened in a place that he can't tell you where it happened. And okay, maybe in 10 years I'll understand what he meant by that. Matter of fact, I just got an image of what he might have meant by that. But anyway, we don't know what that means. Anyway, it was one of these initiations that not only went into, it wasn't only physical, it was physical, etheric, astral, and ego, and it went into the future, and it went into the etheric realm. Because in his next incarnation, this wondrous child who took all this in became Christian Rosenkreutz and got initiated again, as John said, through the chemical wedding. Again, good luck trying to understand that. I studied that for so many years, and I understand some of it, but some of it I can't figure out. And I know there's fantastic secrets, and one day I'm going to read it, and it's just going to explode my brain again, which is good. By the way, when I say explode your brain, you don't need the brain cells of materialism to think spiritual thoughts. And you don't even need your brain. You need your brain to be empty like a vessel. But anyway, so he gets initiated in the next incarnation, and he's got all these people that he teaches. And then there's the next one that everyone goes absolutely gaga for, and that is Saint Germain. If you were Saint Germain, of course you were probably, I'm spiritual. I must have been Saint Germain in the past, right? How many people have you met, John, who really did believe they were Saint Germain? And how many people have written books and had cults and cults of the personality? And when you get to the secret inside, it's, I'm Saint Germain. Okay, what does that mean? It means that perfected body is available for many people at once. And so people with pseudo clairvoyance, and they rub up, they can't quite understand Christ in the etheric, because that would, of course, set their brain on fire and it explode. And your heart, your heart would just go out to the edges of the universe, and then your brain would explode. So they can't understand Christ. So they understand Christian Rosenkreutz, who was the human, who was not such a nice human, who went through many incarnations, but through Christ was raised from the dead. He was Lazarus, raised from the dead, John the Beloved. And he was previously Hiram Abiff. And if you go into Masonry, like some people I know, you learn that it's all about raising this person from the dead. You go through 3 stages, and in the end, they give you this special handshake, and they raise you from the dead after they kill you. Don't forget, they kill you first. And then they raise you from the dead, and then you go, oh, I'm immortal. Okay, well, you can do that in your head right now. Okay? Reincarnation. You're reincarnated. If you know that, bingo, bango, you're enlightened, and you know that you're immortal. That's the whole point of enlightenment. So what did Christ teach? He's immortal. After he died, he was awake and went to hell and told those people who he was, and then he came back up, and then he told everybody again for 40 days who he was, showing that he had the magic plasma body that could pass through walls and do anything he wanted and appear whenever he wanted, and multiple people. It's some magic thing that's far beyond matter, right? And so spirit's beyond matter, and I call it plasma, but that's just because the new theories of plasma allow that. And it's 100 years later that Steiner talked about it. And now I can talk about it. So anyway, Christ in his resurrected body, you could call it, was able to do all these magical things. Well, Christian Rosenkreutz is said to be able to be a master of music, a master of purifying gems, a master of tanning reindeer hide, a master, you name it. He traveled he was from the Rakowski family, traveled literally, they say, from Transylvania, what's now Transylvania, through Europe. He was considered royalty everywhere, and whatever their problem was, he solved it. Whatever their biggest problem, first thing he asked, what's your biggest problem? And he did different things everywhere because he had so many capacities. He had infinite capacities. And he was behind the scene. He didn't need to be out in front. And he inspired many, many people and lived alternately with Saint Germain, or CRC, lives alternately with the Master Jesus or Master Zarathustra. Every 100 years, one of them needs to be incarnated to be grounded in this realm. That's the inner secret. The ultra inner secret, or the what do they call that? There's a outer inner and well, they call it super secret, but anyway, this is the super secret. Is that we incarnate and Christ incarnates all the time. He's in the etheric. The resurrection body's there. He's still doing magic, and we can replicate that by simply coming into resonance with it. That's really the inner secret. And so you can see that on the other side of matter, there is spirit. And that spirit is not just the plasma in the universe, which is just the lower level of that. There's also the invisible dust clouds of plasma. But beyond that, and there's the stars, and beyond that is the astral. Well, you have an astral body in you. So your astral body goes beyond the stars. It goes into an invisible world, and it penetrates this world because everything's in a continuum. There's no frontal speed of light. You know, there's no looking into the stars and you're looking into the past. It's complete nonsense. You're there. That's all you. It's all in you. So when you can realize that you're everywhere at once, then this body, you know, is just, you look at it and you go, well, why am I even in this? Because you're down here in the physical plane. Has to be a duality. So you have to have ether and you have to have plasma. Christ needed the mother, Eve, the human Eve, who could carry the wisdom of the world, to carry the weight of his understanding of the wisdom of the world, or he couldn't become blank and empty like a holy grail, a vessel, to go get baptized and receive the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is what we're describing. All these people, bodhisattvas, avatars, they're all inspired by the Holy Spirit, which is an emanation of Christ. So the way Steiner describes it is there's Christ is in the middle, there's 12 bodhisattvas around them. In the far triptych, the triptych of the future, we have the 12 hierophants around the wondrous child who only lived to a very young age, but as he did, he literally turned transparent. Well, this is a trick that can be taught to you by the Tibetans. They can turn invisible. They can have a rainbow coming off their head, that they can have the Pentecostal fire. That's nothing. They almost all do that when they go back like this, and they start channeling their lineage, right? It's not them, it's a group soul, so it's a higher thing. Well, you can go into the future group soul and get that higher thing through understanding this process that we've shown you in this book. Because Saint Germain is who we were supposed to be. And if you want to know who we were, you should know who the Master Jesus is, because he tells you all about the past. He was the past that brought it forward so that Christ could take the past and create something new and go in the future. And that's what those 12 hierophants had to do around Christian Rosenkreutz when he was the wondrous child. They had to pour all the wisdom of the past because they had met before, earlier. And Manu, Scythianus, and Zarathustra met with Mani. Did he also meet with Buddha? I can't remember. Anyway, he met with these great masters and they said, how are we going to preserve the wisdom of the past? How are we going to carry forward that wisdom so that it's somewhere available in the etheric? And to really imprint in the etheric, you need to do it from the human realm. You need to do it with the human body, because we are the perfect image of the cosmos. So you can't just go in the cosmos and imprint this, or scientists would have learned how to explode that by now. You have to do it through the human body, through the human heart. And when you do this, you're actually contacting your capacity through your own DNA, because everybody's connected to everybody. We all go back to three Eves from Africa, and they go back to Lemuria, which goes back to very, very few people. So we have in our DNA the complete memory of all of this. And we even have an etheric version of the entire cosmos. I won't go into that because that might be way too much to say today. Anyway, we have in the etheric body, it's the most perfect image of the cosmos, and also the place where we imprint our own astral memory. So when someone dies, their astral, their ego goes out, their etheric usually dissolves. But when you're a great master, a bodhisattva, you're a Manu, you have been overlighted by an angel, a subornal connection between, the angels, archangels, archives, and these powers, mights, and dominions, and even higher beings. When you have that in you, it is not wasted. So Steiner called that the realm of spiritual economy. So the spirit doesn't waste perfection. It makes a copy of it, because why? Every time that you do anything, you create an elemental force. If it's got a lot of elemental force and actually beings come in and start to serve it, both lower elementals and higher elementals, it goes on until you stop it. Now, if you're a high being and you created an elemental force that is a beautiful, perfect body of meditation, of concentration, of beauty, of grace, of harmony, of love, of compassion, all those things, and you have embodied that, it's not going to be wasted. It's going to be imprinted. Let's just call it in the Akashic records. And then it's there for you to use later, but you'll be different then. But it's there for anybody to use, because it's like it's like when Elvis Presley made his first album. You can go listen to it right now. Well, you can go through your heart, you can go listen to what Christian Rosenkreutz went through in that initiation, because that's what we are going through in this time. Are we really going to be able to not only be ripped into 3 parts, but are we going to be able to be ripped into 12 parts and still be cohesive? That's the question. Only with the help of a whole lot of other spiritual beings, some of whom were humans, some are bodhisattvas, some are ascended. But Christian Rosenkreutz stays right there at the threshold with Christ to help you across, because he's totally human. Christ became human. And also Sophia, through Eve, became human. All of them stand at the threshold, and many others, to help you dissolve your bad stuff and just focus on the good stuff and cross over and actually be awake in the spiritual world. Because you will be in the spiritual world, but if you don't dissolve your bad stuff, you're just creating a cloud around yourself. You can't see anything. So what we're trying to teach here are the deepest secrets. And the deepest secrets of the Rosicrucians, as I said in the last presentation, is to understand that behind physical matter is spiritual substance. It's not even substance. You can't use the word substance. It's nothing that you can think. It cannot be earthbound. It cannot be mathematical. It has to be transcendent, so that you can say it's both earthly and cosmic, because that's what it has to be. It has to be a microcosm and a macrocosm joined. One by themselves doesn't even make sense. That's where the scientists look out the macrocosm and make up stupid theories. But if they could join the macrocosm with the birthing child in the mother's womb, as Steiner said to do, and put astrophysics right alongside the study of embryology, and you connected macrocosm and microcosm, you would actually be able to do what the Rosicrucians said was the secret teachings that emanate from the body of Christian Rosenkreutz.
Yes, and you can carry a little further. There's an interesting legendary account that Carlo Pietzner used to share on rare occasion when he would come here and teach over at the Waldorf Institute, a teacher training of which Douglas was the protege of Werner Glass, who was the head of the Institute. And so that was our milieu back in the late 70s into the early 80s and for many, many years. But Carlo Pietzner would come to town from Camp Hill, and he would tell a little story about the child of Montsegur. And it's quite a fascinating story. I've never seen it told in any books. In fact, it's not even included in this one. I just thought I'd mention it in passing to give you a little kind of a breadcrumb to lead you a little further down your path of exploration, because it's very interesting in that there are other people that I have posited different versions, but I tend to trust someone like Carlo Pietzner, as he is such a key individual for my personal growth, and I know for Douglas as well. So when we look at this and continue on into this whole legacy that has been given to us, this golden legacy, that we have to understand that if we can bring ourselves to comprehend who the people are at the foot of the cross and what they are attempting to bring into being as it unfolds in the future. That's really the key for understanding many of the aspects of the mystery of Golgotha. And Rudolf Steiner says it's important to understand that the mystery of Golgotha only occurred one time. He said, just like on a scale, you wouldn't have 2 points. You have one center point that serves as the point of balance for the scale. And so you look at that and you realize that of course that makes perfect sense, as it happens so many times when studying Rudolf Steiner's work, that he gives you an example. At first you might seem rather confused, or that it's a little too quixotic for you. And then finally you get to understand what that word quixotic means, and you gain a deeper entry into the significance of what he was trying to tell you. And so that is the nexus of this triptych, that it's meant to be food for thought, and it's something to be held as a private meditation, and Rudolf Steiner was somebody who could speak so openly about so many things, but yet he always would add the caveat that there are many things he couldn't speak about. And so he left it to the future to unfold some of these other arcana that are encountered on this path of initiation. But one key for understanding what he did accomplish is when asked as to how he came about to address all the topics he did, he said, well, people asked me. And so it was a result. Every lecture he gave was a result of a question that someone had asked him, that he didn't like arbitrarily decide he was going to do this or that or the other thing, but that he would wait until it was asked of him by somebody in the external world. And so you have this whole idea that you have an inner relationship to the universe, an outer relationship to the universe, and that there's this whole mystery of how these two come together and how they unfold. And on one level, you could say that is the way in which the mysteries of ancient Greece and the mysteries of the Old Testament, that they come together and they converge to where you have the perfected beings that are represented in the Old Testament coming together with the imperfect beings that are also present in this world, and that those beings that are playing catch up, so to speak, those retarded beings, they bring a lot to the table. And it took a St. Paul to be able to unlock some of the relevance of the Greek culture and the developing Roman culture at that time to be able to embrace Christianity. So ironically, it wasn't really through Judaism that Christianity spread. It was really through the world of the olive tree, the language of the Koinoid Greek, and the whole mystery streams that converged in the ancient world, that gave people the type of concepts that could help them understand the mysteries of Christianity. But he said, in actual fact, that the spread of Christianity was due to very simple souls that had very sincere and open hearts. And so you're left with some real dilemmas here in trying to come to a deeper relationship with this subject that we all love so much. And so I just want to pass off to Douglas here and see what he could add to that.
Well, I think of Jeshua ben Pandira. When you talked about the confusion that so many of them have, some will say that Jeshua ben Pandira was Jesus and that there was no Jesus. That's one theory. And he was the leader of the Essene community. And since John the Baptist was an Essene and Jesus supposedly of Nazareth was an Essene, then they just say, oh no, there was no Jesus. He wasn't even a man. They have discarded him altogether. But Rudolf Steiner points out that when Gautama Buddha ascended under the tree, he became Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha Buddha, Prince became enlightened under the Bodhi tree. At that time, that was the best that he could do because it was before the incarnation of Christ. So he understood the 6 stages of compassion leading to love. But love is not a feeling. Love is an action that moves through you. Love is Christ. Love is what keeps the whole universe going. So when Christ was born in the humble manger, Buddha was still hanging out. Why wouldn't he? For the greatest being who's ever incarnated. He only had to wait 600 years. And then what happened? He had to get involved. And so he got so involved with the Christian stream that in the end, CRC asked him, would you please go to Mars? Human beings are becoming so violent and aggressive. I need your help to calm them down. And this is what Buddhism can do. If you haven't tamed your physical body, then you need the teachings from 2,000-3,000 years ago, and you need to get your body together. So all the systems are all connected. But the Maitreya Buddha took over as a bodhisattva when Gautama Buddha went to Mars, probably even before then. And this new being, Maitreya Buddha, will be the Maitreya Buddha in X number of thousands of years, depending upon human evolution. And the amazing thing about that is, as you're a bodhisattva, you have to go through many incarnations before you can be a Buddha, according to that system. So that is thousands of years in the future. But during that whole time, all of the beings from the previous lineages that are caught up to modern time and can look in the etheric realm and see Christ appearing in the in the etheric realm through the astral body, through their own angel. If you can contact your angel and look through your angel, you will see Christ in the etheric, no matter what tradition you are. So what is it that the Maitreya Buddha teaches? How do you recognize the Maitreya Buddha? He teaches the same exact substance as Christian Rosenkreuz. The cosmology, the microcosmic cosmology of Christianity, with Christ becoming not only the Lord of Karma, the Lord of Reincarnation, but the Lord of the world. Everything you eat and drink, if you are a true Rosicrucian, becomes the body and blood of Jesus of Nazareth turned Christ Jesus. So these are the deepest mysteries, and we can say them in all kinds of mysterious ways because we don't have, endless time to describe it in great detail for you. And if it did, we'd have to go back and show you in the books that you might have been reading all your life, that it's been there all along. But when it's pointed out to you, it becomes a revelation. And that is the beauty. I say that the most developed Christian cosmology in the world is through Rudolf Steiner. Is there a way to get it? Can you go through his Christian community? No, the Christian community and anthroposophists are like the difference between those who are doing it for devotional heart purposes and those who are doing it for the mind to make charts. But in between is art. And that's what Anna May has done. She has put into this this must have been an astounding painting. It must have been huge. They say it was huge. I don't know. But if I look at that long enough, the past, the present, and the future become one. Well, isn't that the whole intent of knowing that you're an immortal being? Is that you understand the past, the present, and the future are all connected? You can't die. Isn't that the message to everyone under the cross, at the foot of the cross? Isn't that the message that their karmic and reincarnational path and destiny of providence proves out in the way that is so perfect that you have to say, oh, now I can see how karma can mitigate what I think in the moment may be horrifyingly awful, because I'm locked in the moment. I'm locked in a linear time. But once I get to the realm of the spirit of duration, and I can see the past, present, and the future, and I can know that's true for me and true for all beings, then we start to see through. And so Rosicrucians, followers of Christian Rosenkreutz, in the end see the rose on the cross, or the seven roses, as the seven planets living. They're not dead. And when you can control the forces of the seven planets, and you are in your center, your heart, the sun, and you're on the cross of the world, which is not pleasant. The three-dimensional world is not a pleasant place. And you then transcend, because what transcends, if you look at the rose cross, what should happen? You should smell roses. And the roses take you directly into the spiritual world. And that smell will come, as my wife can demonstrate or tell you by demonstrating to you that she was there and has witnessed it many times, that the smell of roses accompanies moments when we take big spiritual steps. So the living cross of the rose on the cross is in one image really what the triptych of anime is trying to get across. And without the grounding of the excellent work John did on the many things Steiner said about the incarnations of these beings, and you'll only get that in this book, and also if you in other parts of other books of his, he has some of this stuff for you. And so you can get it from that, but it'll take you some years of meditating on it, and no matter how you go about it, to understand it in its fullest ramifications. So when they would say the two Johns of Jerusalem, so it would mean nothing to anyone. But if you say that to a master mason, and you reach out your hand and you show a grip and a sign, then they know you're ready to go to the next level. And really, that's what the Holy Grail is about. It isn't about you find a physical object and now you're holy. No, it's about a stage of going up a 7-story mountain to the summit. And when you reach the summit, I assume that you'll see other summits in the distance, which you'll probably have to go to the valley again to go up to them. But the point is that it's an ever-ending opening. It's the doorway into the spiritual world is not an easy one. It takes you looking at yourself saying, could I be a Cain? And in my relationship, is my partner Abel? You have to ask yourself that. You have to ask yourself, what would you do if you were these beings under these circumstances? And those are the archetypes that live in you naturally because you're in a physical body. So through initiation, they take you onto the quick path to open you up to look at what then arises out of you. Initiation doesn't take you anywhere. You're in a sepulcher. You're in a tomb. You're in a coffin. It doesn't take you anywhere except yourself. Now, can yourself go out to the edges of the cosmos? Absolutely. Can all the time, every time you go to sleep. But you're just not conscious of it. So when you become conscious that you're a being that's as big as the universe, and that we all interpenetrate each other along with bodhisattvas, avatars, Mahatmas, Manus, angels, and all the hierarchy, and that they're all working for your advancement, then you realize that the ones who count are on your side, and the other ones are part of Maya. They're part of illusion. And what we're trying to show you is that you are on this path at one position or another. So why not find out what the path is about and where you're going?
And keep in mind that at the mystery of Golgotha, Christ was crucified between two thieves, or some say a thief and a murderer. But keeping in mind that he also turned to one of them and said, you shall be with me today with my Father in heaven. So there's still hope. So I hope that you live with that and that you feel as honored as I am to be able to share these moments together.
Through science fell in wisdom.